All right, before you get all worked up and start blowing up the comments, just hang with me for a second. I think there's an actual real deal path for Abdul Carter to end up with the Atlanta Falcons by the end of day one of the NFL draft. I know it sounds crazy, but it's not as far-fetched as it seems. Now, depending on when you're watching this, it could be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, who knows. I'm actually on my bachelor party down in New Orleans, probably stirring the pot with Saints fans already. But I had to throw this theory out there because if even one person out there believes in this enough to ride with me, that's a win. So here's the deal. Right now, all the smoke heading into the draft points to Cam Ward going number 1 overall. That feels locked in at this point. Then, at number 2, the Cleveland Browns. And yes, it still feels weird saying they're drafting this high in a mock scenario, are being linked to Travis Hunter. Now, this is the spot where things could go completely sideways or absolutely perfect for Atlanta. See, if Cleveland does decide to take Abdul Carter at 2, then yeah, this whole theory goes out the window. Done. Finito. There's no way Atlanta jumps from pick 15 up to number 2. That's just not happening. But if the Browns go with Travis Hunter, which a lot of insiders are starting to think they might, then now we're cooking with gas. Just 1 week ago, Abdul Carter was the heavy favorite to be their pick. But things have shifted quickly, and now Hunter, the do-it-all weapon from Colorado, is getting serious buzz. So let's say Cleveland takes Travis Hunter. That opens the door. Now we're at pick 3, the New York Giants. Could they take Shatter Sanders? Honestly, yeah. They brought in Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're out on drafting a quarterback. Joe Schoen and Brian DeBall are feeling the heat. This is a prove-it year for both of them, and grabbing a quarterback like Shatter might be their way of saying, hey, we've got a long-term plan. Give us one more shot. Plus, let's be honest, the Giants are not hurting for pass rushers. They've got Dexter Lawrence in the middle, Brian Burns, and Kayvon Thibodeau flying off the edge. That front 7 is actually solid. So maybe they decide to pass on Carter and instead roll the dice on their quarterback of the future. And that brings us to pick 4, the New England Patriots. I could totally see them grabbing Armin Mbo, the offensive tackle out of Missouri. Big dude, nasty streak, just screams Patriot pick. So with all that happening, the door might just crack open wide enough for Atlanta to slide in and make something happen for Abdul Carter. Look, I'm not saying Armin Mbo is a better prospect than Abdul Carter, because he's not. Carter's a freak. But here's why the Patriots might pass on him. In year 1, under Mike Vrabel, New England went absolutely wild on the defensive side during free agency. They brought in Milton Williams from the Eagles on a big deal. Harold Landry made the jump from Tennessee. Carlton Davis came over from Detroit. They even added Robert Spillane from the Raiders. That's a ton of investment on defense. So at some point, you got to balance it out. And right now, that offensive line in front of Drake May is a disaster. Straight up. Let's run it down real quick. According to PFF, the left tackle, I'm not even sure who that is, ranked 69th out of 81. That ain't nice. Cole Strange, can't stay healthy. Garrett Bradbury, he's average, on his best day. Their best offensive lineman is a right guard no one talks about. They signed Morgan Moses, sure, but he's more of a veteran insurance policy than a long-term fix. So yeah, I could absolutely see them going with Armin Mbo here, or maybe Will Campbell from LSU. Either way, you've got 2 solid options to shore up the trenches and keep May upright, because if they don't, he's going to be picking turf out of his helmet all season long. Passing on Carter would sting, but if the Patriots are serious about protecting their rookie QB, this is the way to do it. And depending on how this pick goes, things could really start heating up for a potential Falcons trade-up. All right, so if New England does go O-line at pick 4, which makes a ton of sense, then suddenly we're looking at the Jacksonville Jaguars sitting there at 5. And they're in kind of a weird spot. Everyone's mocking Mason Graham to Jacksonville right now, but I'm not sure that's actually the move. I mean, sure, Abdul Carter would be a sick pick talent-wise, But where does he fit? They've already got Travon Walker and Josh Allen flying off the edge. Even on the interior, they've got some young dudes like Mason Smith and Davon Hamilton, guys they've taken in day 2 of recent drafts. They might just want to stay patient and let those guys develop instead of crowding the room. So here's the play if you're Atlanta. You get on the phone with Jacksonville and say, look, Carter doesn't really have a home in your front 7 right now. Why not trade back, grab an extra first rounder, and let us take that number 5 pick off your hands? You're talking about moving from pick 15 to pick 5, 10 spots. That's a massive jump, but it also gives Jacksonville a little cap flexibility, a chance to still get a solid player at 15, and now they've got 2 first-round picks in next year's draft. And here's the thing about that 2026 draft class. Early signs say it's not loaded with round 1 guys. So if you're Jacksonville, maybe it's smart to play it safe, stack some picks, and not swing for the fences when you don't need to. If we're talking about what it might cost, just look at what the Cardinals did in 2023. They moved up from 12 to 6, gave up a 2nd and a 5th, and got a 1st and a 3rd in return. Atlanta might be able to get this done for 2 firsts, 1 this year, 1 next. Now ask yourself this. Would you rather have Abdul Carter now or Mike Williams and the 20th pick next year? Flip it to this year. Would you rather have Abdul Carter or Mike Williams and Luther Burden? I'm taking Abdul Carter all day. I get it. More picks always feels better, but sometimes you've just got to go get your guy. And Carter? He had 12 sacks as a true freshman edge rusher, crazy athleticism, freakish size. This kid could be the guy Atlanta's been trying to find for years off the edge. You pair him with Leonard Floyd, and you let Zach Harrison and Arnold Ebiketie keep developing. You've still got David Onyemata locking things down in the middle. Is that a top 5 defense in 2025? Probably not. But is it finally moving in the right direction? Absolutely. Now, I'm not saying Abdul Carter is Myles Garrett or even on the same hype level as Aiden Hutchinson or Travon Walker, but the upside? It's worth betting on. And if all it costs is a future first, you make that move. No hesitation. All right, let's talk real about Abdul Carter here. You give this kid a couple years in an NFL strength program, and I genuinely believe you're looking at a 10 to 15 sack guy down the road. That's the kind of production teams spend years chasing. Now, the big knock on Carter? Play strength. That's the red flag. Oh, and he's still pretty raw at the position. But here's the thing. He's 21 years old, man. You don't think that as he gets older and keeps hitting that weight room, he's going to grow into that body and add some of that grown man strength? Right now, he might struggle a bit setting the edge or anchoring against the run. But give him 2 or 3 years, and I think he could really develop into something scary. And no, I'm not saying he is Micah Parsons, but they both came out of Penn State. They both got freaky athleticism, and if you're telling me Abdul Carter becomes 90% of Micah Parsons, I'm smashing that trade button. You're giving up pick 15 and a future first for that kind of potential? Come on. That's a no-brainer. Now, Atlanta's front office still has to do its homework. This draft class has a few dudes with some stuff in their past, and Carter is one of them. Let's just be honest. First, there was a misdemeanor for having some alcohol in his dorm back in September 2023. Look, he's a college kid. Not saying it's right, but it's definitely not the biggest deal in the world. Then came something a little more serious in April 2024, a simple assault charge. Here's what reportedly went down. Carter's car was about to get towed. He thought the tow truck driver wasn't legit, ran outside, pulled the guy out of the truck, and threw him to the ground. Police got involved. Carter had to do some community service, but from what we know, there was no jail time or anything long-term. So yeah, there are some red flags off the field, and that's something Atlanta would have to be comfortable with. And just to add one more thing to the list, he's also dealing with a stress fracture in his right foot, discovered during the combine. That's going to scare some folks too. Look, he's not the cleanest prospect in the draft. He's not the safest guy on the board. But you're also not trying to build a roster full of choir boys. You're trying to find difference makers. And if the Falcons can make that jump up to pick 5 with Jacksonville, it might just be worth the risk. Let's rewind that draft scenario real quick. Cam Ward goes 1, Travis Hunter likely goes 2. Sheeter Sanders, yeah, he might slip past the Giants. And if all that happens, Atlanta's got a shot. A real one. All right, let's finish this thing strong. Could the Patriots take Abdul Carter? Absolutely. They could be sitting there, foaming at the mouth thinking, let's get the best defensive player on the board. But here's the thing. They already dumped a boatload of money into defense during free agency. It's probably time they think about protecting their shiny new QB, Drake May, instead of adding yet another pass rusher. This feels like one of those don't follow your heart, follow your head moments for New England. Their offensive line is garbage, like real bad. And this draft class, not exactly stacked at tackle. How do I know? Because the freaking Titans gave Dan Moore, yes, that Dan Moore from Pittsburgh who got roasted weekly, $80 million. That's how desperate teams are right now. So if the Patriots decide to play it smart and go O-line, then that opens the door wide open for Atlanta. But what about Jacksonville? They could say, nah, we're staying at 5 and we're taking Abdul Carter. Totally possible. But they also might look at their current roster with Josh Allen and Travon Walker already coming off the edge and say, do we really need another pass rusher? Or would we rather slide back 10 spots, get a future first rounder, save a little money, and still draft a baller at 15? That's the sweet spot. That's where it becomes a win-win. Falcons move up and land their guy. Jags play it safe, save cap, and stack future picks. That's how you build sustainable rosters in this league. If this trade goes down, the Falcons would still hold on to their second-round pick, which is massive. You don't feel pressured to double dip at edge rusher. You already got the best one in the class. So now what? Now you pivot and say, where else can we get better? Cornerback, baby. It's been a minute since Atlanta invested heavy at that position, and Benjamin Morrison out of Notre Dame might be sitting right there. Yeah, he missed half the 2024 season with a hip injury. That's something teams will need to check out. But rewind to 2023, this dude was a lock for the first round. In 2023, Morrison racked up 3 picks, 13 pass breakups, and only gave up 279 yards all season. Guy was straight up locking receivers down. He comes back for 2024, gets hurt, stock drops. And now, you might be able to grab him in round 2. If you're Atlanta, this works out beautifully. You don't need to force a starter at corner. You just need to boost depth and develop. And Morrison, if healthy, gives you first-round talent without using a first-round pick. The Falcons can afford to take a swing on Benjamin Morrison in round 2 without asking him to come in and be a day-one lockdown guy. They've already got A.J. Terrell, Mike Hughes, Clark Phillips, and D. Alford holding it down at corner. That's a solid group. So what does that mean? It means you don't rush Morrison. You give that hip time to fully recover, get him up to speed on the NFL game, and just let him learn for a year. While other teams might be saying, hey, we need you to start right now, Atlanta can take the long view. Let the kid sit, watch, train, and fully heal. And then in 2026, if you want to move on from Mike Hughes or someone else, boom, you've already got the replacement in-house ready to go. Worst case, you've got elite cornerback depth, which is something every NFL defense needs these days. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's episode. Appreciate you all for tuning in. If you like the breakdown, smash that thumbs up down below so we know you're riding with the vision.